1998 Volvo S70 GLT. This is the most emotionally exhausting relationship you're ever going to be in. Because what do you mean it's almost 30 years old, over 279,000 miles, it's missing a cylinder, has an engine with more leaks than a Marvel Studios production, smokes with every single cold start, and has a whine at 55 miles per hour that's louder and more obnoxious than a Pontiac Sunfire with a $50 Amazon gift card exhaust system?
That shutter at 55 is annoying as hell.
Yet it rides as smooth as an eggshell. This is madness right now, happening here. Each time she starts up, it feels like the end. This is going to be our last ride. It kicks and it shudders at low speeds, and I can't even imagine, like, if the key comes out, you just know this engine is never turning over again. You start browsing the Facebook marketplace of the mind, or imagine scrolling through cobblestone-floored Cadillac DeVilles on Bring a Trailer. And just when you have that theoretical new car lined up in your mind, you get the notification that, what do you mean it just passed inspection? How are you still here? You've been dying since I was close enough to school age to remember what polynomials are. This is the automotive equivalent of an uncle who eats a pound of bacon fried in lard and drinks a handle of Thunderbird wine every other day and still outlives your college roommate who went to the gym 11 days a week. You keep getting a Christmas card every year, even though you could have sworn you went to his funeral back when the first Avatar came out. He's still alive, but nobody knows how. This Volvo S70 GLT is exactly that. It's that deathless uncle that told the Grim Reaper to go eat a milkless bowl of uncut phalluses, and then the Grim Reaper just nervously backed away like a kitten leaving a room full of unsupervised toddlers. But how is this car so bad? And how is this car so wonderful? Well, I'm the Roman. This is Race to the Bottom, and my search for the worst car in the world rages on.
This episode of Regular Car Reviews is sponsored by Factor, and I have to level with you. In the past year, I have gained 10 pounds by doing just sitting around at my computer. So I legitimately have to learn portion control, and thank goodness that Factor is here. You think I'm joking about this? I'm not. I saw myself in a live stream the other day. And I'm like looking at my stomach and I'm like, ugh. And I know what's doing it. What's doing it is me eating peanut butter out of the jar. I have peanut butter and jelly and a spoon and it just goes in between. I'm not making that up. Chocolate chip muffins. But thanks to Factor, I'm going to have portion controlled meals that are delicious, ready in 2 minutes, and they're going to be satisfying. So head to factor75.com or click on the link below and use my code, REGULARFB50. That gets you 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for a year. My code is, that's good. My code is REGULARFB50, REGULARFB50 at factor75.com. And I'll confess, like in the previous ad reads I did for Factor, I was layering all this stuff on a bed of rice, and that was partially my fault. Because I'm like, I need more carbs. So I was eating too many carbs and then just sitting for the rest of the day. Yeah, I did go to the gym, but what's the saying? You can't work off a bad diet, but that's no problem because Factor has keto-friendly meals, it has vegetarian options, it has protein plus. So for someone like me who does go to the gym and does lift weights, I'm going to be focusing on their keto meals and the protein plus. So thank you so much, Factor, for sticking with Regular Car Reviews all these years. And now, back to whatever Nick's doing.
1998 Volvo S70 GLT. Brought to you by deferred hip replacements. Because the doctor says I'm overdue, but last I checked, I'm still walking. Why did the S70 go away? I'm genuinely wondering, because I feel like this should have lasted a lot longer than the 3 or 4 years it did. The trim was over $30,000 new in 1998, which is about $60,000 today, so it wasn't exactly cheap, but it arguably earns that price tag by still delivering a rewarding driving experience today. Although it's not without its headaches. And really, if I think about it, this car should be everything I hate. Low-speed travel is really rough. It just feels like it's going to fall apart the minute your foot hits the gas. I don't think I've ever driven a car that feels this close to death in my entire life, and I had a Kia Rio grenade itself underneath me. Yet this Volvo somehow rises from the grave on the highway, and it basically becomes an entirely different car once the turbo kicks in and you safely surpass 55 miles per hour. You see, the Volvo S70 GLT is not defined by speed, but it can be quick. And this is what I found interesting about it, and it's probably a weird point to make, so just bear with me. But in a lot of cars, you can lose track of just how fast you're going, so that when you merge, you might just stay running at higher speeds without realizing it. And suddenly you're doing 80 in a 55, and oh no, here comes Officer Beatwife. But I can't imagine that happening here, not just because you need to actively floor it to get above 70, but because there's a sense of direct engagement that makes you keenly aware of just how fast you're going. And yeah, I know, experienced drivers should be able to feel how fast they're going, and a well-made car should offer the kind of engagement that allows your butt dyno to tell. A driver shouldn't need systems to let them know that they're speeding and that maybe you don't want to be doing that. But it can be easy to just lose track, you know? Not everybody is the ideal driver all of the time. And so it helps that this Volvo feels tuned to compensate for inattentiveness. The engine here is the 2.4-liter 5-cylinder low-pressure turbo, making 190 horsepower at 5,100 RPM and 199 pound-feet of torque at 1,800 RPM. And because it's a low-pressure turbo, it gives you enough to get you up to highway speeds, and then let you just coast. There's more power there if you need it, but I feel like most drivers aren't going to. It delivers exactly what the moment demands, even as the blown cylinder means it occasionally fights like hell to give it to you. Which is why I enjoyed myself so much, because for all of its battered mechanical condition, this Volvo feels like a resilient spirit set against the backdrop of postmodern disposability. This is a first-run Game Boy in a sea of iPads. The transmission is the 4-speed automatic, and while factory fuel economy is 17 city, 24 highway, and 20 combined, my spectacular volunteer chase has seen as high as 26 to 27 miles per gallon on the highway in eco mode and an average of 22 in sport mode, which is honestly my preferred driving mode for this, and it's rare that I say that because in most cases, I don't care enough about the difference. But here, it's like everything becomes more linear and focused, quicker acceleration, more immediate power delivery, everything a sports mode is supposed to do, but without feeling like it's trying to compensate for not being an Italian sports car. You know what I mean? This is an economy driver, a daily for people who eat box without having to be asked. Oh, interior. Love the seats. I mean, yeah, they're an eyesore, but they're well and truly broken in. And so they feel plushy and comfortable. The sound system is aftermarket, so I can't speak to that, but controls and knobs, everything was all accessible and easy to operate. There's generous space up front and a surprising amount of rear legroom. It's not the Grand Canyon or anything, but as I sat back here to get interior shots and swap out the batteries in my camera, I didn't have my knees scrunched up against the seat backs like I kind of expected to in a car this size. The actual layout of the interior is kind of whatever. I mean, I don't think it's ugly or anything. It just looks sort of plain at best and downright fragile at worst. The vinyl door trim gets torn up like paintings in the Beast's castle, and the sunroof is stuck open, leaving Chase with no other choice but to stuff towels in there as a form of seal. And despite being far simpler than modern tech-heavy systems, the electronics tend to go on the fritz. Aside from the aforementioned sunroof issue, the HVAC motor getting stuck and leaving one side hot and the other side blowing cold is another problem. And the window switches have this issue where they'll lower the windows but not be able to raise them, and vice versa. And I get that this is a turbocharged car, but as Chase explained to me, this takes premium gas. Premium gas. En esta económica? Ay, bendito. This can be surprisingly pricey for a car that, at a distance, gives off such normcore vibes. Doesn't it look like a car for the kind of person who makes a meal out of getting an apology?
Look, I was wrong. I shouldn't have left the milk out, Dave. That was my mistake, and I am truly sorry. It won't happen again.
Okay, because I'm just saying it would be bad if one of the housemates drank that milk and got sick.
I understand, Dave. I'm sorry.
I mean, Michael is already lactose intolerant. Could you imagine if he got the milks confused? That could have been really bad.
All right, Dave, just accept the apology. You don't have to take a victory lap. Jesus.
The Volvo S70 GLT activates cognitive dissonance like a sleeper agent because I can't remember having driven a car that's as big of a mind rip as this. It's fun when you dig into it, but its operation is so inconsistent, it's almost like it's trying to keep you at arm's length by interrupting whatever affection you might be building towards it. This is a turbocharged Scandinavian greeting card to distant relatives. Kind enough to let you know the kids are doing well, but cold enough to remind you you're never seeing them in person again. For every kindness the Volvo S70 GLT provides through its workmanlike competency, it adds a bunch of headaches that make you wonder why you'd stick with it in the first place. Because in addition to the aforementioned wonky issues, the truth is that this is probably one of the more expensive, cheap used cars you can buy. Let me explain. Driving a 90s Volvo is like finally paying off the wedding ring 3 years after the divorce was finalized. Because once you commit to the S70, you have to accept that sometimes the love is going to evaporate long before the responsibilities of that commitment do. This is a durable car from the pre-2000s era of Volvo, when their build quality had a better reputation, and it also is from that pre-1999 era before Volvo started sharing platforms with Ford. So yeah, the S70 was a sturdy car, and obviously it still is, but that doesn't mean stuff doesn't break. This was a significant financial commitment because you don't get to 279,000 miles cheap. So ownership becomes a relationship defined by dysfunction. You resent that stuff keeps breaking, but the stuff that breaks is never big enough to justify getting rid of the car altogether. And you've already sunk so much time and money into it, so why not just hold on to it? After all, this 28-year-old Volvo is probably going to be more reliable than whatever passes for an econo shitbox in 2026, right? And that's the catch. Not that it's necessarily better than modern cars, but that the things that break here are smaller than the things that tend to break on, say, a Nissan with a CVT. And this pretty much backed up what Chase told me about the car, which he summed up in a really succinct fashion. It's overbuilt and redundant because while there's a greater chance of something breaking, there's less of a chance of things breaking completely. And I can see the argument. More parts means more failure points, as Volvo claimed that some 1,800 changes were made to the S70 from the Volvo 850 that preceded it. But even with all those extra parts, if the failures are ultimately smaller, then you're still coming out ahead, technically, right? If nothing else, I would rather have to replace the PCV system every 80,000 miles or so than drive a car where the suspension components don't last worth a damn and transmission linkages erode faster than grade school friendships. When Chase found this car behind his buddy's shop, all it needed in order to run were new piston rings. Kind of a big deal, but not so big that it was cost prohibitive, particularly since he was sold this car for just $600. And while Chase has mentioned stuff like needing to keep an eye on the timing belt for any failure points, Ultimately, the largest repairs were to things like the AC evaporator, the heater core firewall connection, and the passenger CV axle. Now, I'm not saying this is an indestructible car, or that maintenance isn't expensive, but simply that this car feels likelier to reward your maintenance than a more modern car that wasn't built to the same standard of simplicity. We don't have any hybridized systems here, no complicated infotainment stacks, or a zillion different ECUs, or active suspension components and emissions hardware. Chase blew a cylinder and still made it from Pennsylvania to Atlanta and back. Speaking of Atlanta, cheap plug, but go check out my latest RCR Stories video on the 2014 Atlanta snowpocalypse, the most trouble that 2 inches ever caused. Phrasing. I think, in a way, the S70 was the end of an era. This is among the last of the mechanical throttle body Volvos, and the S70 kind of sums up just what was represented by that era. A simple sedan from a period of engineering more focused on being intelligible than intelligent. I mean, cool, I get the SIPS side impact protection system, great. Mechanical firing pin style airbags instead of sensors, terrific. At least enough for Ford to eventually want to adapt it to their own vehicles. Awesome. And while the headlight wipers and front left turn signal cover are missing here, I'm not sure it's something I really care enough to dock it for. You still get the singular rear fog light too, and hey, Chase even added a bullhorn so we could get an insane amount of ducks and deer out of our way during the shoot. So yeah, this car is kind of a mixture of factory imperfections and aftermarket upgrades that coalesce into a car that, while not perfect, has value that is apparent when you actually get to drive it. Yet you don't really see this car on the road that often, or at least I don't. Because even when a Volvo S70 doesn't have the litany of problems that this one has, there's nothing particularly appealing about it unless you have a fondness for the no-frills character of Swedish engineering. The bones of this car are great, but nobody knows it because there's nothing that compels you to want to find out. Yet there's every possibility that the S70 was never really meant to succeed long-term. When you look at the arc of Volvo's history, the S70 reads as a kind of stopgap, a bridge between the 850 that preceded it and the S60 that came after. And if you think about it like that, the S70 didn't go away due to obsolescence, but mostly because it finished its story. It did what it came here to do, and disappeared, even as it was arguably better than its successor. You don't see this car on the road for the same reason you never see your high school friend group anymore. Not because you saw them at their worst, but because you saw them at their best, and they'll never be better. So let's leave the memories alone, yeah? Alright, so I enjoyed this car a lot, but I can't really say that I loved it, that I wanted to own it myself, mostly because I don't have the time, money, or patience for the kind of upkeep a car like this requires. But I can appreciate it as a car I got to sort of have for a few hours. If the criteria were less rigid, this would probably be top 5, but the mechanical instability kind of holds this back. So the 1998 Volvo S70 GLT falls into the ass crack of the race to the bottom. Neither top 5 nor bottom 5, but still a worthwhile experience. I'd like to thank Chase for volunteering and for being such a good friend. Subscribers on Patreon might remember him as the guy who bailed me out of a check engine light at the last RCR meet. I really appreciate you, and I also appreciate Chase's buddy Walter and his mom for helping to keep this thing running in the first place. And I appreciate you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, tap the bell icon, support us on Patreon for $1 for early and ad-free videos and exclusive content, and check out our merch links below to rep RCR wherever you go. And if you think you have a car so bad I couldn't possibly like it, or you have a car Brian might want to review, hit me up at regularcarstheroman@gmail.com and specify whether it's for Race to the Bottom, RCR, or either. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, you and me, we can light up the sky. If you stay by my side, we can rule the world. Oh, did I accidentally hit? Of course I hit a siren.